So if this isn't your first lunch hour legal marketing rodeo, you know that from time to time, Conrad and I like to thank our listeners who leave us reviews or say something nice about us or say something indifferent about us. But this time, our segment on asking them for a review and our next segment are actually kind of related. So let's start with, I received an email from some folks on our team, and the email said, I was listening to Guy's latest podcast. Sorry, Conrad. Apparently it's my podcast. Well, he brought up a better question that we thought we should be asking. So this was someone inquiring with a colleague of mine at Attorney Sync about exploring whether we might be the right fit for what they need. Based on your review audit of our SEO, what should our expectations be? Right? We just talked about expectations. Yeah, right? So
perfect.
Listener, yeah, love it. Any forecasting in terms of qualified leads consultations over time? ? So 1, thank you so much for listening. 2, thank you so much for holding us accountable to answer the questions that I'm posing on the show. For others that are out there listening, please do hit us up, hashtag LHLM. We really do appreciate the feedback, whether it's reviews, emails. We're very, very proud of our silliness on YouTube, so check out our YouTube channel. Which takes us right into the next segment, which is, so Conrad and I were kind of thinking about this, and it made me think, what a great opportunity to do some LARPing. Conrad, are you a big LARPer?
LARPing? That it sounds like something you do at a county fair.
Maybe. So LARPing, for those that are not familiar with this fun activity, is live action role play. And there's a famous
live action role play.
Yes.
This is a family show, Guy. The last time we recorded, you were talking about something wiggling on my lap, and now we're doing some role play.
Well, I suppose it depends on what roles you're playing and how you're playing them. But in this context, what we're going to do is some legal marketing LARPing.
Marketing LARPing.
Yeah, so here are our roles. I'm going to be lawyer person looking for SEO, have a bunch of questions about it. Hey, I listened to Conrad and Guy talk on the show. I got some questions about this expectation because I think we can go a little bit deeper. Conrad and I had a conversation offline of what should you be doing in month 1? So we thought this might be a good opportunity for lawyers to get a sense of hey, here's some things I'd be doing if I was just getting started with SEO, again, whether it's in-house, doing it yourself, or working with an agency. What can move the dial in a very short period of time from an SEO perspective? Conrad's going to play himself, which he's so good at playing. And so let's dive in. So Conrad, who's my first character going to be?
Well, I think it's really important that your first character is not a solo practitioner in downtown Chicago, going to dominate the market for personal injury. And that is a real, so the reason I'm saying this is not the case is when we're specifically talking about finding a situation where we can see some quick wins in SEO, right? And this is where Guy and I offline had a lot of conversation around, we want these big quick wins, but So what does that look like? Where can that happen? The answer is it's not the new solo starting up in a big city doing PI. It is not probably the criminal defense lawyer in a big city starting up. Guy, you are a family lawyer. You have been working on SEO for the last 10 years. You've used a variety of different vendors. You've been frustrated with many of them. You've tried lots of things yourself. You've been to lots of conferences. You've done a whole bunch of things. But you feel like you've kind of plateaued and you are really, really frustrated and you think most legal marketing agencies are lying thieves.
So I'm playing myself. Except for the family lawyer part.
Did we decide where you are?
Yeah, you got to tell me where I am in the world.
You are in, let's call it a secondary city. Let's say you're in St. Pete, which I believe is one on the outskirts of Tampa. Right. Okay. So it's a great geography. And the reason I'm focusing the geography here, and we talk about this geography is, in some cases, if you're in the middle of nowhere and there's no one else out there, it's a great opportunity for you to actually get really quick wins. That can be the thing that gives you the quick wins. The second piece is if you're in a huge city, like you just don't really stand a chance, right?
And here's another question that I should be asking. What are we going to set as my primary objective for this? Like, what am I coming to you? Because you kind of said you're frustrated. You don't really trust your agency. You don't really know what the metrics are. So what am I? So am I just generally coming in being like, I'm just generally frustrated, or do I have some data and I like want to talk about like cost per client and reducing cost per acquisition? But where am I sophistication level wise?
Sophistication level wise, I'll make you the typical conversation that we have.
Yeah, that's what
we think things have plateaued, right?
Okay.
And you want to grow your law firm. You're not quite sure how much you want to grow the law firm, right? Like, I want to be bigger. How much bigger? Well, I'm not sure. Bigger than last year, right? Okay, good. But you have a level of sophistication because you've been doing a lot of this yourself. You've done a lot of research. You've gone to the seminars, blah blah blah. But things have really kind of plateaued, and you're frustrated, and you feel like, here's the other thing, you feel like everyone else is catching up, right? And you're starting to feel like you were left behind. You were doing it yourself earlier, but you're now starting to feel like you're left behind.
Got it. So tell me, what do I need to know? What are we going to do here?
All right, Guy. So the first thing that I want to talk through in terms of, we're going to be looking for opportunities that can have a meaningful impact quickly. And I want to set your expectation that we really don't want to be focused on the things that are under important. I think the things that become really important are whether or not you're generating business. And so a lot of the metrics that we deal with and that we see are not related to driving business for you. So for example, the classic one is the ranking. So we're going to improve your rankings, Guy. Well, which is great, unless no one's looking for those terms, right? Or we're going to improve your rankings, but we're talking about local, and so we're not really looking at the overall radius where you're ranking. We're just talking about how you rank in your own office, right? And so rankings, or we're going to rank for something that's actually not going to turn into clients, right? You use this on the last thing where you rank for Detroit Tigers. Well, great, you get a ton of traffic. Well, that doesn't really help. So that's not really that important. And we're going to get increasingly important. So rankings is not something that I really want to focus too much on. Traffic, good but not great, because traffic, again, you can get traffic for things that no one is going to actually hire you for. So our ability to drive traffic is not that helpful. In fact, we've dealt with sites where we've reduced the traffic, but actually increased the next piece, which is the most important thing. Well, sorry, there's one more thing. The next one is leads. We don't necessarily want to be maximizing for leads either, Guy, because a lot of the leads, and I know this from our own data, 84% of the leads that Mockingbird delivers, 84% are not real leads, right? They're garbage. They're not just bad leads, but a lot of them are,
bots.
Can I guest post on your website, right? And that shows up as a lead because that's how Google Analytics looks at tracking conversions in your system. So you fill out a form, great, that's a lead. The quality of that form is a question. So what I really want to get to, Mr. Lawyer, is what can we do to drive consultations, right? And from there, like, we want to make sure that those people flow down the pipeline and you're responsive to them, et cetera. But really, when we're looking at marketing channels, it's can we drive consultations?
And so what can we do? So I agree.
Yep.
Marketing person.
Great.
What is it? But so number one, this is another thing I wanted to qualify about, because a lot of lawyers that we talk to, they're open to whatever we think is the best thing for them. So maybe it's SEO, maybe it's ads, maybe it's something else.
Right.
But for this conversation, are we going to assume that we're focusing on SEO? We've decided
we're going to focus on SEO.
Okay.
And that means a couple of things, right? So to me, and what I want to throw out is the notion that SEO always has to be this long-term play. It's always going to take time. But it presupposes a couple of things. Because we're focusing on SEO. One, you've got a site already that it's been there. We're not starting from scratch. Number two, you have a significant amount of content, that you've done a bunch of stuff. And that's why when I was talking to you earlier, I was kind of framing your profiles like you've been at this for 10 years, right? And you've had a lot of people at it, which means that a lot of people have probably effed it up somewhere, right?
Right.
And number
what's
three,
what's my link profile look like?
well, so that's exactly what I was going to get to. Number 3 is that your link profile is actually solid, right? Where and that's a function of being around for a long time, but like the link profile and the focus of this conversation is we're trying to get some big wins early on. Fixing the link profile is not a big win early on answer. It is not if that is your weakness, this is not the right conversation for us to be having, right?
And if someone's pitching you on that in month 1, be careful.
Yes, because you may. Why would one be careful, Guy?
Because there's only a few ways to generate significant links in 1 month, and 99 out of 100 of those ways can actually get you in trouble. There's really only one way, and that's like you happen to publish something on the site that just takes off, which is very exceedingly rare. But if you're out there like getting a bunch of spammy links. You get a significant number of spammy links, you're talking about manual actions, meaning somebody at Google flips a switch and your site disappears.
Which would be bad. And then you're mad at me, but I disappear, right? Because, hey, it's not my business. Sorry, I was just the agency.
Got
now
it.
You're
So
holding the bag.
I've been doing this a long time. I got a pretty big site. I've got a bunch of links, but I feel like things have flattened out.
And the big site thing is important because content does take time. High quality content takes time. So that is also not a quick fix answer, right? Although we're going to get into, so if you need to build out content, it's not a quick fix answer, right? That's kind of if that's your profile, it is very possible that there are quick fixes, and I mean this, that can generate more consultations in month 1 if you make them. Okay. So what do those things look like? The first we're going to talk about is what I will call your terrible undirected content strategy. If you have hundreds, 800, 1,000 plus pages of content, you probably have a bloated site with terrible content. And when I look at content, when I look at really large sites, and this is also correlated to a really large site with a really poor backlink profile, the likelihood that a lot of your content is actually getting any traffic is close to 0. So we can actually make really, really dramatic, fast improvements by thoroughly going through your content and adjusting what is there and dealing with it page by page by page by page to turn a 850 page site into a 250 page site. That can
for folks where that's maybe there's some I'm gonna make it more kind of technical gobbledygook.
Go.
Just explain kind of how you do that. You crawl the site and then you compare the pages that actually exist versus the pages that are showing up for organic traffic through analytics.
Well, I mean, it can be as simple as crawling the site and realizing all the garbage pages that you have, right?
So the eyeball test.
It's just like really basic.
25 pages for permutations on plurals.
Permutations on plurals. It's the tags that showed up in WordPress that have generated a bunch of duplicate content that you didn't know about. It's
category pages.
Tags and categories are classic for this. But the other one is just like you guys have been told that you need to publish, right? Google loves fresh content. Garbage. Like that's not true. No one needs 25 pages about we won super lawyers in 1995, right? No one cares. So that stuff is a bunch of garbage. Now, the thing that I don't think people understand is Google looks at your site from the quality of your site from a site-wide perspective, which means if you have all these like tiny little pages that are useless and dated, it's hurting the good stuff, right? And so the classic simple approach to looking at content is kill, consolidate, or keep, right? Every single page, what do you do with it? Now, the bigger your site, the more you have to deal with, the longer this takes, but like this is something that can have dramatic, very fast impact. So what I will call a terrible content strategy. The next one, and you alluded to this the other day, was technical disasters, right? Like absolutely obvious technical mistakes. It can be things like you don't have H1s included in your CSS. It could include things like you have tons of 404 pages, right? So you've got, 20% of your pages are broken 404s. Well, Google's not going to send traffic to a site that's full of 404 errors. So looking for these kind of low-hanging technical disasters can have a big impact, right? It really can.
No, I mean, we see this all the time. And it's a couple more of my favorites. The H1 is actually just your logo image.
Yeah.
Or your homepage title is home.
Right. So like, think of all the links going to your homepage title and you're optimizing for the word home, which is great if you're in real estate, but like, come on.
Home's tough to rank for.
Home is very tough to rank for. And also, if you're a law firm, you don't want to rank for home, right? Because no one's going to buy your home law services. So, it's things like that where there's just really big technical messes. And you would think the more SEO experts you have engaged to work on your site, the better this problem would be, the less of a problem this would be. It is the opposite. I don't know if you see this, Guy, but the more hands we have seen the more cooks that have been in the kitchen, the more likelihood the dinner is terrible, right? Like it's a bad meal. I'm stretching on my metaphor here, but you get my point. Have you found the same thing?
Yeah, I think the big thing the big obstacle that we see all the time, and this is the classic at the SEO water cooler or bar, depending on what you're into, is that you make these recommendations and then somebody's got to go implement them, right? So if it's, sometimes our clients will be like, look, we want your expertise, but we've got an in-house marketing team. They're actually going to make the updates. And then there's the telephone game of like, well, number one, it got pushed into a developer's queue and it got pushed way to the bottom of their priority list. And we're like, these are the quick wins. You got to do that makes them, do them now because they're the low hanging fruit quick wins. And two is that, even though you think you put a cell together, it's like, this should be the page title for this URL. What comes out doesn't always match up. So that's where I find most of my frustrations with it in terms of like the too many cooks in the kitchen thing. Like, now if you've got many cooks making different recommendations, that's even worse. But usually we see the bottleneck in the implementation.
Which is why you should clear those bottlenecks, right?
Right.
For experts.
Single points of accountability. Who's responsible for doing this?
Like that is if that's what's slowing you down, like that is, I hate to say this, that's your fault, right? Like if you're hiring experts, get out of their way.
Right. One more point on this, because maybe think about site change ledger. Put a site change ledger together so you know when changes are being made and who made them, whether you use analytics annotations or use one of these plugins. Like track the change, treat your website like it's software. Track the changes. And
what you will find when you do that is you will see some dramatic improvements that you can pinpoint to when those changes have happened. You may also, Guy, and we see this, sometimes we make changes and you're like, well, nothing happened.
Change it back.
Right? Like, and I mean, so that was on my list as well. On-page adjustments. We talked about that, like changing what the title tag for the homepage, like the fundamental components, H1s, title tags, like what can we do to actually improve the basics of this? But you need to go back and see if it had an improvement. So that is the thing that is missed over and over again. You get these people who think, now I'm being pejorative, but a lot of people listen to best practices or they read things or they hear from their buddy that this is how SEO works and you got to have, 27 characters in the H1 or whatever it might be. Fine, go play with that stuff. But none of you are going back and looking to determine whether or not it had an impact, right? And that can be ideally, it's a consultations impact, but at the very least, it's a traffic or at the worst, a rankings impact. And if you're making these changes and nothing has happened, stop making those changes. Or worse, it's getting worse. Well, go backwards, right? But you skip this spot over and over again. So you do all this stuff but no one's tracking to see whether it works. Especially with on-page adjustments, like just go back. Go back a week later. Go back a month later. See if you've had any impact. And then you iteratively get better. And the last one, Mr. Fantasy Role-Playing LARP client, is local was classic for very fast improvements. And the classic ones that we've dealt with in local, and one of them is still very relevant, is categories. You don't have a category. Get your category right. Yeah, that may be all you have to do is add categories or the correct category to your Google business profile. And all of a sudden, Google realizes that you're not a restaurant, you're a pizza restaurant, right? And that is so important when people are looking for pizza, because Google's not going to send someone to a restaurant. They want to send someone to a pizza restaurant. So that was classic. And the other one, and I hated this, I still hate this, and it's not as much of a big deal, but this actually came up. It was a post by Andrew Shotland, who is one of my favorite SEO nerds out there. And he was talking about how to 10x your SEO traffic, and I kind of was like, all right, well, what are you going to do? And Andrew's response to that, Guy, the punchline was, get someone who's responsible for the outcomes, right? Which is exactly what we're talking about here. But Darren Shaw added to the thing, hey, it's a lot easier. Just throw just spam the crap out of your Google business profile name, and that'll have an impact too. That is certainly true 12 months ago. It's much less true today.
They're working on it. I don't know. Go check out what's going on in the local pack in LA. It's ugly. But I'll even give you one more that's based on your point, which is go report your competitors who are spamming. Because you want to know it's a really easy way to rise to the top. Get those other ones to fall out because Google doesn't want to serve them up because they're spam.
Okay.
People don't like that one, but works.
And sorry, just to build on that, be very careful when you do that. You don't want that to come back to you and you become persona.
Oh, no, you do it anonymously.
This is a great way to do
We have
this.
Conrad do it. I'm hiring you to do it, Conrad.
Great. And I will make sure that nobody knows which of the law firms my agency has burned because I don't want to deal with those negative reviews.
Right.
Okay. We ended on kind of a dark note here. Let's try and turn this positive. So everyone, instead of listening to agencies talk about how it takes time for SEO, walk into this, especially if you fit that profile of someone who's been around for a long time. You're frustrated. You've had lots of eyes on this. You've done a bunch of hands-on work yourself. You have a reasonable backlink profile and you have a bunch of content. It's very possible that those improvements and actual consultations, which is where we started from, you can see an improvement much more quickly than our industry would lead you to believe.
And so that's what I wanted to get to. So in your experience, you've been doing this for a long time. What kind of impact might I see? And I got to get, everything's different, dynamic environment, but I'm getting, benchmarking 10 consultations. Have you seen that double after some of these changes, triple? What should my expectations look like?
I think if you have a mess that's this big, we have definitely seen, and I'm going to make a fallacious assumption here, but so just bear with me.
That's
here.
my favorite kind of assumption.
The fallacious. So I have seen improvements in traffic that have happened immediately, and I'm going to make the assumption that improvement in traffic was not because we started putting up a bunch of content that was going to drive traffic that wasn't going to talk to a law firm, right? So I'm making those assumptions. But you can see traffic as much as 40-50% increase in a 3-month period with a commensurate increase in leads, form fill, phone call, text, or chat, consultations, right? So it's as qualified, if not more qualified, which then turns into clients. Now, 40-50%, that's on the top end, but regularly you're seeing improvements from some of these things in the 5 to 20% range, and it is very doable in a short period of time.
Awesome. I'm sold. Where do I sign up?
Oh, well.
Mockingbird.com.
We'll have to have it's not even Mockingbird. It's mockingbird.marketing. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, that's a long, we're not going to bring that one up. Want to dig through Conrad's dirty laundry. We can do that for our next episode. We'll talk about that.
We're trying to end on a positive again.
Yeah. Okay. With that, look at we'll end it this way. Look at your backlink profile, right? And take a look at something as bad from a diagnostic perspective as Ahrefs. Try and see whether or not your Ahrefs number, DR, is reasonable. If it's in the 6 or 7s, go away. You've got a different problem. I had this the other day. And then find out how much content you have. Do a site : search. Go to Google. Do site : and then put in your website. Find out how many pages. The very first result will tell you the number of pages that Google has. And that may give you insight as to whether or not you have something that you can turn around in a more aggressive than SEO takes time timeline. Money makes a money.